reclaimed land. Because about a mile north from us here is Georgetown. Georgetown was a major port in the middle of the 19th century. Problem is, the Potomac River is incredibly shallow. And it was getting to the point by about the 1860s, 1870s, where ships were being built too large to actually get up to Georgetown. Well, Washington couldn't lose its only port. Well, only its commercial port at least. So the Army was charged with dredging the river. Dredge the river, you got to have somewhere to put all that land, all that silt. So they created this whole area. Now, we're actually a mile away from the National Mall. We're not on it right here. We're in Potomac Park. Potomac Park because it was built out of the Potomac River. The National Mall stops at the Washington Monument, at least on paper. Now, of course, we don't call this the National Mall because it's in a line with the rest of it. But since this was all built later, it was never intended to be. It was in the 1910s when the Macmillan Commission actually redrew the map of D.C., incorporating all of Potomac Park in. Now, have any of you guys ever tried to drive in D.C.? Fools. Don't do it. Keep the car outside, take the metro when it feels like working. This city is incredibly complicated to figure out if you're driving around. But if you were to look at a map, it's actually really simple. At least the original parts of the city were. We, like most American cities, are a grid. We've got numbered streets, we've got lettered streets. North, south, east, west. Pretty simple, right? You guys come across any of those funny state avenues that seem to just come out of nowhere and go random places? Well, they're actually a grid as well. Again, the original ones. Today, we've had to cheat some of them around here and there. Have you guys seen what D.C. looks like on a map? What shape is it? A what? A rectangle. Yeah, but how does it sit? Is it a flat rectangle? Or is it turned? It's a diamond. Diamond shape, meaning that we still have a square, but the square is slanted. All of our state avenues follow those slants as part of the full outline of the city. Anytime at least two of the cardinal direction streets and at least one, but more often two of the state avenues intersect, we have either a big circle or a big square that are parks today. And in most of those, there's either a Revolutionary War hero or a Civil War hero. We've got generals and admirals and all kinds of guys up there, most of whom you've never even heard of. Also, if you guys are interested, there's a rumor got started somehow that if the horse's got its feet down, they lived, and if it's reared back, they died, or vice versa, something like that. They're just artistic choices. Nothing to that, sorry. But each one of them are specifically chosen for commemorative purposes because of that intersection. Now in Potomac Park, none of those intersections existed because none of the roads did. This was the water. Until the Macmillan Commission overlaid the original grid onto this. They discovered that several key places, like right here and over where the Jefferson Memorial now are where major intersections would have occurred. Thus, where you've got to put a memorial. Now if you guys have been up into D.C., you might have noticed that most of the memorials are very simple. One pedestal, one statue, either a guy standing or a guy on horseback. That's about it. Here, a little bit more, you might be able to tell. Because this isn't only a memorial circle, it's also the new symbolic end of the National Mall. I mean, there's got to be a memorial, but there's also got to be something monumental. So, think back to 1914. That's when all these plans are being made. We've already got a monument to George Washington. Who is the next most important American in history that we're going to build a memorial to? The consensus was Abraham Lincoln. Although he's actually the second memorial built in Potomac Park. You guys have any idea who the first one was?
Jefferson?
Nope, not Jefferson. Jefferson didn't come until 1943. I bet most of you have seen it. Probably had no idea what it was. You guys been by World War II Memorial? Did you cross that street in front of it? Anybody happen to look towards the water? See that guy standing right there at the end of the road? John Paul Jones. He was the very first memorial built in Potomac Park. But Lincoln was the first of the big ones, what we normally refer to as the icon memorials. Now, we already had George Washington. What's his monument based on? Anybody know?
The obelisk.
Obelisk. Now, what culture is the obelisk from?
Egypt.
Ancient Egypt. So the idea was that ancient Egypt was the first of the great civilizations. Washington created our great civilization, so very fitting. The obelisk is also a traditional sign for power and respect. The bigger the obelisk, the more important the person is who it represents. Most obelisks are between 10 and 50 feet. Ours is 555. We thought Washington was pretty important. The largest one there is, and I have a feeling probably ever will be. So Egypt's done. That's taken. Can't copy it. What's the next great civilization in our history? At least in Western history. Ancient Greece. Let's take a look at this building and where they got the idea. Based on an ancient Greek temple. All right, since we're on a roll, what's the third great civilization? Rome. You guys looked at the Jefferson Memorial? Roman in design. The idea is that we've taken the three great Western civilizations and we've literally surpassed them. We've incorporated them with our own. Sort of the idea we're trying to send to the rest of the world is we are now the ultimate of civilizations. Come on, we'll show you the world. And that's exactly the type of thing that Lincoln was trying to do with many of his actions during the Civil War. Trying to save the Union and eventually trying to end slavery. You guys may have noticed on the inside a slight problem. There is a major difference between this memorial and a Greek temple. You guys know what it is? Take a guess. The steps are there. There'd be a statue. Traditionally, they're standing up. The whole memorial is sideways. Greek temple, you enter on the short end, you walk down the length, and then the statue of your deity is standing in the back. So you have to really work to get there to see it. A lot of times there'd be tapestries or something else along the way telling the story of whoever it is. There was thought that we would build it in a traditional Greek style. A couple of problems with that. Number one, look behind me. Yeah. To the right, or to your left, really pretty. It's Arlington National Cemetery. But look over that one. What a beautiful 1980s economic construction in the city of Roswell. Now, that's all fairly new, but similar thought back when they were designing this. That city does not have any type, or it does have some, but nowhere near the level of control that the government of DC has over building height, building style, building design. You can build almost whatever you want over there. Thankfully, the memorial designers had the forethought to think, you know, that landscape is going to change. At the time, it was all trees. They realized, though, that it would keep building, keep evolving as a city. There'd be no control over what you saw behind the Lincoln Memorial. If it was that narrow facade of the traditional Greek temple, you'd see it, but your eyes would also look right past it. Cheating a little bit, you turn the memorial on its side, we've got a wall, a backdrop. It catches your eye, it keeps your eye in DC. With only having the narrow opening in the middle, it channels your eye right through, especially at night when the lights are on. You can see, make out every detail of Lincoln's face all the way from the Washington. And that's the idea. You stay in the park, you don't look beyond. Of course, they had to make a few changes. They did decide to sit him down. Imagine if you walked up those steps and he was standing all the way up to the ceiling. Ooh, way too much. Sitting him down makes it a little more in proportion with the chamber as it is. Also does something else very important symbolically. Lincoln is sitting, we're all standing. Lincoln is given the respect of the room. He's allowed to sit if no one else is. That left the two side wings open, so they decided to incorporate the words of Lincoln. On the south, we've got the Gettysburg Address. Don't know if you noticed on the mural above, central figure, allegory of an angel raising hands high, shackles falling off of slaves on either side. Over on the north side, we've got Second Inaugural Address. The main theme of the Second Inaugural is the end of the war, reconciliation. So there, the central figure is bringing the brothers of North and South together in a handshake. Lincoln's hands. One closed fist, one open. Now, have any of you guys ever heard what the story is behind his hands? Anybody know? Well, the thing I most often get is, oh, it's sign language. He's signing AL for his initials. Isn't that cool? Well, it's fake, but yeah, it's cool. In reality, he's got a closed fist for strength and determination. No matter what, he's going to save the Union. A lot of times we forget Lincoln pretty much threw our Constitution out the window during the war. He suspended right after right, imposed all sorts of new laws, all to save the Union and bring it back together. That was the closed fist. Once the war is over, got an open hand. Afterwards, he's willing to let bygones be bygones. Welcome the South back in, not punish them, but instead rebuild the country and move forward. He definitely had the closed fist, but he never got the chance to actually open that fist up at the end. Something else. We didn't go around to see it, but on the back of the memorial, on the back of Lincoln's head, there's something else carved. And you guys know what that story is. You guys do not watch any TV. It is all over the place. Nobody's heard anything?
Made in China.
Actually made in Boston, of the finest materials from the greatest state in or out of the Union, Georgian marble. But no, on the back there's a face hidden in the hair of Abraham Lincoln. That face, if this wall wasn't here, would have the same view we have. Right across the now Memorial Bridge, right up to that big pink house on the hill. You guys know what that is? Alright, what is across the bridge? Start there. Arlington National Cemetery. So what's the big house in Arlington?
The Lee House.
Arlington House. Prior to the war, that whole area was known as Arlington Plantation. It was property of the Custis family. The Custis family is actually descendants of Martha Washington before she married George. Custis family built that house. That was actually sort of their own private tribute to George Washington. But in the middle of the 1800s, the daughter, Mary, was looking for a husband, a nice, respectable Southern gentleman from Virginia, of course. And she found a young lieutenant in the U.S. Army by the name of Robert Lee. They got married, and Arlington Plantation now became the property of the Custis Lee family. Technically speaking, Mary still owned the property. But in 1850s culture, even though it was her bloodline that had the money, he was the man, so it all of a sudden became his. 1861, Civil War breaks out. Lincoln actually asked Lee to take command of one of the Union armies. Slight problem though. What side was Virginia on? The Confederacy. At the time, most people, especially Southerners, had stronger loyalty to their state than to the national government. Lee resigned from the Union Army, actually in the bedroom over in Arlington House. Shortly thereafter, evacuated Arlington Plantation, went down to Richmond to be an advisor to President Jefferson Davis. Eventually, he would rise up and become one of the primary generals of the Confederate Army. So, Arlington is now abandoned, and the Union Army moves in. They take it over, turn it into a garrison, and began burying